I'd like to share with you a reading from my book, Cairn-Space, Chapter 1. Watering the gardens at the beginning and the end of the day has been an activity that has peppered my life from youth. It is relaxing. It also feeds me in ways other activities do not. It has been a cairn in my life since childhood. It has been a sacramental landscape for meeting God. It has taken me into my heart. When I am about the task of watering gardens, I am reaching back into my life and doing something that is self-soothing and connective. It integrates the disparate pieces of my life. It is wholesome for me. My life is a train of stories of watering gardens. I can remember watering gardens as far back as elementary school. In all of that practice, I have learned to be in God's presence as I water. The magnitude of repetition over the years has been a force capable of establishing union with God through this simple act. Some years I take to watering much more regularly than other years. It has partly to do with the gardens I plant and the needs they have for water flow. It is also connected to the fact that some years are naturally wetter than others and require less garden tending from me, the waterer. Sometimes I simply water because I need to. It is good therapy. However often I water, I am reminded of the tending that needs to accompany all forms of life and growth. I'm reminded how I am tended by the gardener of souls. Watering helps me conform to his image and likeness. Watering nourishes my heart space. Watering is an activity that sacramentally transforms my life when I am attentive to the process. One particular season had called me to the task of watering more often than in other years. That year I learned to love the routine for its calming effect in a new way. The sound of water, the greenery, and the repetition of a simple task. It soothed me and gave me peace. I learned a lot from the regularity of the task that year. I learned from mindfully practicing the art of watering. The thing that most presented itself to me that particular year of watering was that I learned from the praying mantises. They taught me the art of slowing. They showed me an image of watchfulness and waiting, of discrimination and patience. While watering, I was able to silence enough of my inner chatter to focus on my surroundings as the water flowed and saturated the earth and beaded on the leaves and flowers. I watched the mantises on the rise. I became intensely aware of reality. The watering flushed praying mantises up and out of the cover of stalk and stem onto the walls and branches and posts. Had I not been paying attention, I would have missed them. I would have never seen what they had to teach. They climbed up, trying to avoid the water I was adding to the garden, and as they climbed, they would often spot a bug and settle in for the kill. Patiently, they would wait for the perfect moment before striking. In their rising, nourishment presented itself. They would stop and dine. They watched and waited like the wise virgins of Jesus' parable. They were watchful and alert. I had the good pleasure to encounter their watching and waiting, slowly focusing on the meal, almost hypnotizing it before the strike. They would become careful and lose their place in time to a slowed attention. It was the power of slowing that Gerald May wrote about in the book The Wisdom of the Wilderness. Their slowing to capture food made me pause, pay attention, and enter in the slowing myself. It taught me about what it takes to discriminate and discern the quality and nature of things in my life. Although all things can move us towards union with God, some things pose potential dangers and threats of entanglement that are just not worth risking. It requires watchfulness and alertness to become nourished, to grow. Slowing helps us to focus and become aware. Nature has a tendency to help us enter the slowing if we watch her examples in other sentient beings. Could my praying become the same? Could I still myself enough to become observant and watch what would rise from my heart as I watered it? Could I become still enough to see the many options for nourishment all around me? Love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, gentleness, self-control, community, forgiveness? For many years prior to this experience of the mantises rising, we had hatched mantis pods as a family. We would buy an egg casing from the local garden store and leave it in the backyard in a covered aquarium. As the weeks wore on, we would almost forget it was there, until one day, Some would notice hundreds of mantises on the wall of the glass. It was hard to believe that so many mantises could be in one casing. They were a shifting mass of life and limb covering the aquarium walls. We would take off the lid and watch them scurry throughout the yard. There was another time we had watched the mantises. Glinda and I had begun dating. We hiked the woods collecting scraps of nature to weave into a wreath. We started with a grapevine. We wrapped it into a circle. We tucked dried garlic mustard fronds into the hoop. We tucked in some mullein leaves and sassafras roots. We also wove in a mantis pod. We had no idea what it was. One night when we returned to her room, the walls were covered in moving spots. At first we thought our eyes were deceiving us. We thought we saw shifting movement, and as we stepped closer we were assured that we did. Hundreds of young mantises covered the wall. This was an accidental hatching. The hatching in the aquariums, they were not. I am glad that we took the time to hatch them. They gave me pause in their hatching and a renewed sense of stillness in watching them rise while watering the gardens. For years we have had more praying mantises in our yard than anyone around. For years I had a new way of seeing. Their presence has been a cycle of routine. I have seen their daily morphs and slow changes that happen to them over time. I have seen how their colors change as summer lengthens and draws to a close. From green to brown they fade, their numbers decrease throughout the browning until they leave the yard altogether. Gone. I could only notice it in the repetition of daily routine. The routine of watering the garden daily brought me to the mantises every day. Routine reveals so much about life and how it is going on, how it is moving ahead, and how it is standing still. The things we place into our lives on the routine basis have such power to affect us. They can affect us in small ways in who we become, particularly when we pay close and steady attention to them over time. Stepping toward the hose at watering time almost felt as if it was entering a holy place, a place where I would uncover the immense glory. The air that surrounded me during the watering time was palpable. I could feel myself entering into sacred space as one hand reached for the hose, the other hand for the spigot knob. I was becoming an act that would transform all space and time. I became a holy event for a moment. That is the best I can do to describe it. A stillness reigned in the act itself. A sacrament was born. Words about phenomena, union, and the sacred are meaningless. The now became the divine milieu.